My name is Dominic, and this is my Section 5 assignment. So, coming from the mostly prosperous, successful, and advancing 1960s, which included civil rights of many minorities and the exploration of space, one would think this pattern would continue. However, those innovative times would come to a screeching halt starting in the 1970s. The energy crisis would start the decline of the US, and stagflation would inevitably drive the US to the ground. It is often thought that the US was still in decline and took a turn for the worse during the acts of terrorism. However, I believe that this actually united the country and was used as a catalyst to drive both moral and economical support of the United States of America. Though domestic oil production was decreasing, the consumer demand for oil products was still increasing. This would cause the US economy to depend more on foreign imported oil. Americans felt as though this oil was at their disposal. They felt that since they were the largest part of oil consumers, that these exporting countries could not afford to lose their business. However, they were wrong. In 1973, OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, embargoed the United States for supporting the Israeli military. When the embargo took place, the everyday life of Americans was changed. The price of oil skyrocketed, and the amount that was allowed to be imported was limited. Prices of gasoline rose unprecedentedly. Limits were put on the amount of gas that could be purchased at one setting. Lines soon formed for gasoline, with wait times as long as 2 hours. Also, certain ways of distributing the gasoline were put into place, and we might even consider them pretty ridiculous. For instance, if your last name was in a certain range, say if it was through A through L, you could only purchase gas on certain days like Monday, Wednesday. If your name was M through Z, then you were only limited to purchase gas on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This embargo will lead to high inflation and also will limit the effectiveness of US businesses. And when US businesses effectiveness is limited, this would in turn limit the amount of money that is available for consumers to spend and stimulate the economy with. Also, this would lead to a severe drop in the automobile industry. People were buying less cars since oil and gasoline prices were so high. All of these factors would lead to a falling superiority of the United States and its decline. Another item that would lead to the decline of the United States is stagflation. Stagflation is the combination of stagnation, which is a prolonged time of slow economic growth, and inflation, which is the increase of price of general goods and services. As you can see, stagflation is a combination of both. As the United States was not crippled enough during these times, stagflation would further carry out the decline of the United States. What caused these economic problems? The answer is organized labor. The working class wanted more benefits and a higher minimum wage, so when these two ideas were agreed upon, this would lead to an increase in the cost of running businesses. And when the cost of running businesses goes up, the price of the goods that they produce also increases. This means that American goods are actually more expensive than imported goods and would lead to consumers to purchase more of these imported goods as opposed to American goods. Also, the working class noticed that prices were constantly rising, so when they would buy their goods, they would buy them in bulk in large quantities, which would further increase demand. And when quantity demanded goes up, price of these items would also go up. This turned out to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. With the dollar weakening and the United States economy in a state of decline, the strength and power of America would continue to decline. As you can see, the United States was not in the greatest predicament. Morale and loyalty was low, and pessimism was a constant mindset. I'm going to skip a couple of decades to the 1990s and discuss terrorism. Terrorism had taken place in America before the decade of 1990. However, it wasn't until the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993, which killed 6 people and injured over 1,000 more, that the complete extremity of the situation was felt. This would not be the only tragedy the United States would face. 8 years later, in 2001, the World Trade Centers would be targeted again. September 11th of 2001, a day that will never be forgotten. 4 airplanes were hijacked using box cutters, mace, and other forms of blades. American Airlines Flight 11 would impact the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. At 9:03, United Airlines Flight 175 would collide with the South Tower. And at 9:37, American Airlines Flight 77 would crash into the Pentagon. The final flight that was hijacked on this day, United Flight 93, was actually delayed that morning. The target of this plane was thought to be the White House or the Capitol. However, Due to the braveness and heroism of the people aboard the flight, they were able to overthrow the hijackers and rush the cockpit. This is considered the first American victory over terrorism, and these passengers of this flight would save countless innocent American lives. As stated earlier, America was already in low times. Such a drastic tragedy, one would think that this would lead to a frightened and fragile America. However, the opposite took place. Americans gained unity from this. Patriotism was increased after the attacks. Community involvement increased as well. People were taking time out of their personal lives to help others and were engaging in actions outside of themselves. Following the attacks, religious institutes saw larger enrollment and parishes grew. Time spent with the family was also increased, and this would lead the American people to have more faith in their leaders and the influence of America. Also growing were industries and production. This was increase this increase was due to certain things such as the World Wide Web and computer expansion. So all these actions would start to strive towards an inclining and stronger America. As you can see, it is true that America was in a decline starting in the 1970s. However, the communities of America would learn from these times and eventually strive. Even when tragedies would strike, Americans would not let this hinder our determination. And through perseverance and unity, America was back on the rise and once again resilient.